You are talking to someone every single day. Good morning messages, late night conversations, sharing things you have never told anyone else. And then, one day nothing, no fight, no explanation, no warning, just silence. You check your phone. Maybe they are busy. You check again. Maybe something happened. You wait until slowly, painfully, you realize they are not coming back. They did not leave with words. They left with silence. And somehow that silence is louder than anything they could have ever said. This is ghosting. And if you have experienced it, the question that haunts you is never really where did they go? The question that keeps you up at night is far simpler and far harder to answer. Why today we are going to answer that, not with judgment, but with psychology. Because the truth about people who ghost is far more human and far more uncomfortable than most people realize. Let us start with what ghosting actually is. In psychological terms, ghosting is the complete and sudden withdrawal of all communication without any explanation. No breakup conversation, no reason, no goodbye, simply disappearance. And what makes it uniquely painful is not just the loss. It is the ambiguity. When someone tells you it is over, your mind can begin to process it. It hurts, but it has a shape. When someone ghosts you, your mind has nothing to hold on to. You are left replaying every conversation, searching for the moment things changed, wondering what you did, wondering if any of it was even real. Researchers call this ambiguous loss, a grief without a clear ending. Your brain cannot fully mourn something it does not fully understand, and so it keeps searching, keeps waiting, keeps asking why. Now here is where most conversations about ghosting stop. They call the ghoster a coward, emotionally immature, cruel, and sometimes that is not entirely wrong, but it is incomplete. Because if we truly want to understand ghosting, we have to look inside the person doing it. The most common reason people ghost is something called conflict avoidance, and it runs much deeper than simply not wanting an awkward conversation. For conflict-avoidant people, the anticipation of confrontation feels genuinely threatening. Their nervous system responds as though the conversation itself is dangerous. The mind catastrophizes. What if they get angry? What if I hurt them? What if I say the wrong thing and make everything worse? And faced with that internal storm, disappearance becomes the path of least resistance, not because they do not care, but because in their own distorted way, they care too much about avoiding that emotional collision. Here is the painful irony. Many ghosters believe they are protecting the other person. They tell themselves disappearing is kinder than rejection. They are wrong. Research is very clear. People who are ghosted experience significantly more emotional distress than people who receive a clear, honest rejection. The conversation they feared would have caused far less pain than the silence they chose instead. But the ghoster rarely knows this, because they are not thinking clearly. They are simply running. There is a second pattern, and it requires us to go much further back, into childhood, into the very first relationships a person ever had. Psychologists call it avoidant attachment. Children who grow up with emotionally unavailable or unpredictable caregivers learn, very early, that depending on others is dangerous. That getting too close means getting hurt. So they build walls, not consciously, but deeply, at the level of their nervous system. And when a relationship begins to feel too close, too real, too emotionally intense, that old alarm goes off, the walls go up. And the most instinctive way to enforce those walls is to simply stop responding, to retreat into silence. They are not leaving because they feel nothing. They are leaving because they feel too much, and they never learned what to do with that. And then there is something else, something almost no one talks about. Some people ghost because they genuinely do not know they are causing harm. If you grew up in a family where conflict was handled through silence, where adults disappeared emotionally when things got hard, then disappearing would feel completely normal to you. Not cruel, just what people do. You would not have the reference point to understand that what feels like self-protection to you feels like abandonment to someone else. This is not an excuse, but it is an explanation, and those are not the same thing. So what does all of this mean for you? If you have been ghosted, it was not about your worth. The person who left was running from something inside themselves. from conflict they could not face, from intimacy that frightened them. You were not the problem. You were simply there when they needed to run. That does not make the pain smaller, but perhaps it can sit differently now, not as evidence of your inadequacy, but as evidence of someone else's unfinished work. And if you recognize yourself in any of this, if you have gone quiet instead of having the conversation, this is your invitation, not to judge yourself, but to ask honestly what you are running from. Because ghosting is never really about the other person. It is always about the conversation you cannot yet have with yourself. The most psychologically mature thing you can do when a relationship is ending is simple. Tell the truth. Gently, briefly, clearly. You do not owe anyone a long explanation, but you owe them the basic human dignity of knowing it is over, because in the end, we all just want the same thing.